Well, better late than never. I'm delighted to say we're joined by the co-leader of the Green Party, Adrian Ramsay. Welcome to the programme. Now,
good afternoon.
The Greens are an anti-growth or no-growth party. Since we've had almost no growth since the pandemic and none again in April, according to this morning's figures, you must be pretty pleased with this government.
No, not at all. And what we argue is that GDP is a blunt instrument. It simply shows the level of economic activity and not the nature of the society that we have. And this government's been taking us in the wrong direction, both on climate and nature, but also on the level of inequality we have in society, with more children in child poverty, on our NHS being severely overstretched. And so we would like to see a wider range of economic measures that account for the fact that we need to have a fairer society, that people need to have access to public services, and that we need to be using the Earth's natural resources in a way that is sustainable and means we have clean air to breathe and clean water to enjoy.
Okay, you say a wealth tax could raise tens of billions. Now, a number of countries have had wealth taxes over the past 30 years. What have they raised on average?
Well, we're putting forward what the proposed wealth tax that we have would bring in based on...
But you must have studied other countries. So
yes,
what have they raised on average?
There's a wealth tax in places like Spain and Switzerland. That's absolutely true. But what we're proposing is a wealth tax on assets and wealth over 10 million, asking people with over 10 million to pay 1% on assets over that 10 million level, rising to 2% over 1 billion. That would raise 15 billion a year by the end of this next parliament. That's a cautious estimate based on our engagement with academics and experts. And that's one of a number of proposals we have where we're asking those with the broader shoulders to contribute in a way that we can invest in both defending and restoring our NHS, as well as the transition to...
No, I understand the purpose. It's whether you raise the money or not. In 1990, 12 European countries had wealth taxes. How many have them now?
Well, I quoted you a couple of examples,
so how
Andrew,
many?
of Spain and Switzerland. I don't know the exact number, but that's...
The exact number's 3, only Norway, in addition to the 2 you've mentioned. And one of the reasons that they gave up on wealth taxes was that they didn't raise much money. They were expensive to administer, but they didn't raise much money. The average revenue raised by countries that still have wealth taxes is around 0.5% of total tax revenues. That's not 50 billion pounds in Britain's case. It's nothing like 50 billion. It's closer to 5 billion if you're lucky.
And France also got rid of its wealth tax. And one of the reasons it did that was because it was starting it at 1 million euros. We're proposing to start it at 10 million pounds. So much more realistic level to start it at.
But it might mean you'll lose less. If you look at Spain and Switzerland and Norway, their wealth tax clicks in at quite low wealth levels, around £150,000. And even when you do that, you raise hardly any money, just a couple of billion. You're not planning them to click in to over 10 million. You'll raise even less.
Well, we're deliberately not starting it at a low level because we don't want the ordinary householder to be affected by this. So it is very much the very wealthiest, the less than 1% of the population that have over 10 million in wealth and assets.
And it raises peanuts.
There's enough, 15 billion a year is what the wide variety of academics and experts we've engaged with.
No country with a wealth tax has raised anything like 15 billion. Now, you mentioned that France had a wealth tax. It introduced a wealth tax 24 years ago, in fact. Could you tell our listeners what happened next?
Well, I told you that they didn't continue with it. And our proposal is very different to the French one because we are proposing to start it at a much higher level.
But even so, it covered the kind of people that you're talking about. Well, I'll tell you what happened next. 42,000 millionaires left the country. 42,000. They went to Switzerland. They went to Spain. They went to Luxembourg. They went to who knows where, Belgium as well. 42,000. And it undermined the country's tax base. That's what happened. That's what you repeat.
And I think that's because they started it at too low a level.
No, it was the
academic
millionaires
debt-
that left. It wasn't the people on 150,000. It was the millionaires that left the country.